I nearly collapsed when I learned my husband had hidden a secret inside that necklace, and my daughter-in-law sold it unknowingly, triggering a dark truth buried for years. I never imagined that at 62, my life would spiral into chaos like this. As a Black woman who has weathered her share of storms, I believed I was stronger than any hardship. But that afternoon, when I opened the wooden box where I kept the last memento of my husband, it felt like someone squeezed the breath out of my chest. The silver necklace, the final gift he left me before he passed, was gone. And then my daughter-in-law, Emily, looked me straight in the eye, completely devoid of remorse, and said, "I sold it. You shouldn't cling to meaningless things." I thought I had only lost an object until that fateful phone call came, carrying a dark secret that could destroy my entire family. If you want to know the truth behind that call, keep watching the story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. My name is Marion Carter, 62 years old, a Black woman of African descent who has lived long enough to know that pain never sends a warning. I thought I'd grown used to emptiness, to the silence that now rests on the chair where my husband Jerome once sat every morning. But that day, I realized some losses still have the power to tear open wounds I believed had already healed. Afternoon light spilled through my bedroom window, casting a soft gold over the walls Jerome and I had painted together years ago. I opened the wooden box he crafted with his own hands, the one I always kept in the drawer beside my bed. Every time I opened it, I felt as though Jerome's warm hand rested on my shoulder, reminding me to breathe, to keep living. But today, when I lifted the lid, all that greeted me was emptiness. No silver necklace, no teardrop pendant Jerome had given me the night before he slipped away in my arms. Just a hollow space, cold and merciless. I froze, letting the shock sink in. I touched the bottom of the box, as if the necklace might magically appear beneath my fingers, as if the last gift from my husband could simply re-emerge. "Jerome, where is your necklace?" I whispered, my voice cracking. I rummaged through drawers, lifted blankets, checked under the bed, searched every corner of the room. Nothing, not even a trace. Sweat formed in my palms, and the room suddenly felt too small, too tight. I hurried downstairs. Emily was in the kitchen, blonde hair tied up, eyes glued to her phone, as though it were part of her. Emily, my daughter-in-law, Noah's wife. Since Jerome passed, the distance between us had become something sharp, something cold. "Emily," I said, trying to steady my voice, "have you seen my necklace? The one in the wooden box." She didn't bother looking at me. "I sold it. Just some meaningless trinket." My mind shattered. "Emily, that was Jerome's last breath left to me." This time, she lifted her gaze, her eyes icy enough to make me step back. "He's dead. That necklace wasn't going to save anybody." Her words sliced clean through my chest. I turned to Noah, my son, the boy I once held against my heart, the one who used to tell me I was the strongest woman he knew. But Noah just lowered his head, refusing to meet my eyes, unwilling or unable to defend me. In that moment, I realized something even more painful than losing the necklace. I had lost them too. I walked back to my bedroom like someone stumbling out of a storm without shelter. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. The emptiness of that wooden box felt like it had opened inside my chest, swallowing every breath. Night fell, and the house settled into its usual rhythm of footsteps and muffled voices downstairs. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I didn't know how I would ever reclaim the last piece of Jerome that had been stolen from me. I was finally beginning to drift off when my phone lit up on the nightstand, vibrating sharply through the darkness. A voice spoke on the other end, tightening every muscle in my body. "Mrs. Carter, about your husband's necklace, we found something hidden inside it." That night, a single phone call made everything worse and opened the door to a truth I was never prepared to face. The phone was still vibrating in my hand when I lifted it to my ear, my breath uneven, as if I had just run from a nightmare. On the other end, a young woman's voice, trembling but steady, spoke. "Ma'am, the locket opened on its own. It wasn't us." I sat upright, a cold shiver running down my spine. For 30 years, that locket had stayed sealed, never once cracking open, even when Jerome tried a few times and then laughed, saying it was his little mystery. My fingers tightened around the phone, my voice hoarse. For 30 years, it never opened, not even when my husband was alive. Downstairs, footsteps thumped heavily, and then Emily appeared at my bedroom door like a gust of cold wind. Not because she heard the call, but because her presence always arrived with misfortune, like a shadow you don't want but can't escape. "Stop calling her," Emily snapped at the phone, yanking the door wider, her eyes gleaming with ownership. "It's mine now." I turned away from her, shielding the phone as if I were guarding the last warm piece of Jerome from her hands. The pawn shop employee's voice sharpened, unafraid of Emily's interruption. "No, what's inside doesn't belong to you." The room fell silent. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding hard, fast, like my body already knew something was very wrong. Emily stood with her arms crossed, her stare slicing through the tension. But this time, I didn't look at her. I stared at my own hand, trembling so hard the phone nearly slipped. "You said?" My voice cracked. The employee lowered her voice so much I had to press the phone tightly to hear her. "You should come and come alone." A door slammed shut inside my chest. Every word dropped like a slow, deliberate knock, announcing something far bigger than a necklace or a few stolen dollars for a vacation. It was something deeper, something dangerous. Emily watched me trying to read my face, but I didn't give her anything. Since Jerome died, I'd learned how to hide storms in silence. I set the phone down, keeping my gaze on the fading outline of Emily standing in the doorway. She narrowed her eyes. "What did they say? What's wrong with you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I saw it, the flicker of concern she tried to bury, that tiny crease between her brows that appeared only when she feared losing control. That night, the house was strangely quiet. Noah avoided my eyes, and Emily moved with a stiffness that made her seem uneasy. I sat at the edge of my bed beneath the warm glow of the lamp, staring at my shaking hands. Jerome always told me I was stronger than I looked, but that night, staring at the phone, I felt like a woman standing between two cliffs, one filled with beautiful memories of Jerome, and the other hiding a truth waiting to explode. "When will you come?" The employee texted one last message. 6 simple words that tightened something in my chest. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply before making my decision. I would go, even if I didn't know where this would lead, even if the thing inside that locket might save me or break me again. I had to go, because it was the last piece of Jerome I had left, and I had no idea that decision would change my entire life. Unravel things I thought I understood about my husband, about my daughter-in-law, and about the family I believed I was living with. I barely slept after that call. Every time I drifted off, the sound of Emily dragging a chair or Noah's exhausted sighs downstairs snapped me awake. By morning, I knew I had to go to the pawn shop earlier than planned. The first sunlight washed over the parking lot, but my chest remained heavy, pulled down by an invisible hand. The glass door trembled slightly as I pushed it open. The young clerk from yesterday, Lily, stood behind the counter, her face anxious but kind. When she saw me, she nodded and immediately reached under the counter for a small velvet pouch. "Mrs. Carter." I opened the locket because it popped open on its own, and I found this, she said carefully. I opened the pouch. Jerome's necklace lay inside, gleaming under the lights. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. It was the small, folded, aging piece of paper tucked beneath it. I unfolded it. The words sliced straight through me. Box 3172. If you're reading this, don't trust anyone blindly. My hand trembled as the note slipped onto the counter. Tears filled my eyes faster than I could breathe. "Jerome, what did you see in her?" I whispered it, my voice breaking. Jerome never wrote anything without meaning. He was careful, observant, and he always saw deeper into people's character than I did. If he wrote that warning, he must have known something about Emily long before I ever suspected it. But the silence shattered instantly. The door slammed open so hard the wall shook. Emily stormed in like a violent gust of wind, hair disheveled, eyes wild with anger. "Give it to me," she snapped, lunging toward me. "You're not worthy of keeping it." I stepped back, but this time I didn't cry. I didn't beg. A cold clarity sliced through me. "Touch me one more time and see what happens," I said quietly, but with a force I hadn't used in years. She froze. In her eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Emily was used to the quiet, grieving Marianne, the Marianne who tiptoed around conflict, the Marianne who clung to the family she loved. She wasn't ready for the woman standing in front of her now. Noah rushed in behind her, breathless from chasing her. "Emily, you're scaring my mother." But Emily didn't listen. She whirled toward him, voice shrill. "You're taking her side over your own wife?" The shop fell into a tense silence. Lily said nothing, watching with cautious concern. I stooped down and picked up the note, feeling something shift within me. I had been weak long enough. "Tomorrow I'm going to the bank," I said, steady and unmistakable. Emily lurched forward as if to shut me up, but Noah held her back. She struggled, her face red with rage, not realizing her panic only confirmed Jerome's warning. I walked out of the shop and felt the morning wind slap against my face, cold but sobering. The paper inside my pocket felt alive, pulsing with every heartbeat. Box 3172, the bank, Jerome's secret. I didn't know what I would learn, but I knew this much. It wouldn't be something small or simple or harmless. Jerome wasn't a man who panicked easily. He wrote that note because it mattered, because it was about my safety. That afternoon, I sat on my bed, staring at the necklace in my palm. I heard Emily pacing outside my door, like a predator patrolling the same territory she thought she owned. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't afraid. I only felt the truth inching closer. Inside that safe deposit box, there wasn't just money. There was a truth Jerome carried to his grave, a truth that might change everything I thought I knew about my family. The next morning, I arrived at the bank before the sun had a chance to warm the air. The crisp smell of dew lingered outside, making me shiver, unsure whether it was the cold or the weight of whatever waited behind that steel door. As the banker led me down to the safety deposit vault, each step echoed through the long hallway like I was walking deeper into the memories Jerome had tried to protect. The door to the box opened with a metallic click. Inside wasn't just the bundle of cash I expected, but a stack of documents tied with an old rubber band and a single envelope resting on top, my name written in the familiar slanted handwriting. Jerome's handwriting always leaned slightly to the right, each stroke gentle like a quiet caress. Just looking at it made me feel as though he was sitting right in front of me, ready to lift his warm hand and rest it on my shoulder. I opened the envelope. The first line alone made my knees almost give out. Marianne, if you're reading this, Emily has already begun her plans. I gripped the edge of the letter, my breath catching in my throat. The vault around me seemed to shrink, leaving only me and Jerome's voice whispering through the ink. I heard her say, "She's old. All I have to do is wait." I covered my mouth, forcing back a sob. I imagined Jerome frail in his final days, overhearing those cruel words coming from the daughter-in-law I had tried so hard to treat kindly. "Emily isn't who you think she is. She wants the house and your whole life." My hands trembled, not only from heartbreak but from fear. Jerome had seen danger in Emily long before I did, and he had tried to send me a warning before time stole his voice. In that moment, I couldn't hold myself together anymore. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and uncontrollable. I whispered into the empty room as if Jerome could still hear me. "Jerome, you were trying to save me even after you were gone." Beside the letter were copies of documents Jerome had gathered, bank slips, loan records, debt agreements, all in Emily's handwriting, many of them using his name. There were notes he had scribbled, each connecting pieces of the puzzle he was too weak to finish assembling. I read each line with my heart twisting tighter, realizing Jerome had been investigating Emily, protecting me in silence as his life slipped away. My phone vibrated sharply on the steel counter. Emily's name lit up the screen like a threat. I didn't answer. A voice message followed immediately, sharp and piercing. "What are you doing? Are you hiding from me?" I shut the phone off. Both hands covered my face as tears fell again. Not from fear of Emily finding me, but because I was finally seeing everything Jerome tried to shield me from. I held the letter against my chest as if holding Jerome's heart itself. Suddenly, everything made sense, painfully, brutally. Emily wasn't just a difficult daughter-in-law. She was the danger Jerome foresaw. She was the person creeping through the corners of my life, waiting to take everything. I tucked the letter into my inner coat pocket, walking out of the vault with slow, deliberate steps. I was no longer only the grieving widow clutching a memory. I was carrying Jerome's final warning, a lantern lighting up the darkness I had feared to confront. Stepping out of the bank, the automatic doors opened and a cold gust brushed my face. I thought I would get a moment to breathe, but as I walked toward my car, a notification from my home camera flashed on my phone. A figure stood motionless at my front door, staring directly at it as if waiting, and I knew instantly it wasn't Emily. This was something far more frightening waiting for me at home. When I returned home from the bank, my heart still felt heavy, as if someone were pressing down on my chest. Jerome's letter sat in my coat pocket, weighing on me with every step. Everything he wrote, every warning, every shaky line left behind in the days when he could barely hold a pen kept echoing in my head. I didn't know how to face Emily, nor did I know what to do with the secrets I hadn't yet understood. But the moment I stepped onto the front porch, all those thoughts froze. On the doormat lay a brown envelope, face up, too deliberate to be a mistake. There was no return address, no stamp, nothing, except a few bold, heavy strokes of handwriting, rushed but firm, only for Marianne. I stared at it, my pulse tightening. The yard was eerily quiet, the trees still, as if the whole world was holding its breath with me. I picked up the envelope and went inside, locking the door behind me before opening it, my hand slightly trembling. Inside was a stack of photographs arranged with careful intention, as if the sender wanted me to understand the truth in one glance. The first picture made my stomach drop. Emily stood beside a dark car handing a wad of cash to a tattooed man. There was no fear in her eyes. She looked cold, confident, and disturbingly familiar with danger. The next photos were worse. Someone had dug deep. Loan documents under my name, forged signatures nearly perfect. Phone records showing Emily calling someone linked to those debts. I stood there staring at the evidence as if I were watching my life fall apart from the inside. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to collapse. But I kept going through the envelope because the worst was still coming. At the bottom was a small black USB. I plugged it into my laptop, palms damp. A single audio file appeared. When I pressed play, Emily's voice sliced through the room, sharp and cruel. "Just get the old lady's signature and everything will be yours." I covered my mouth as a sob tore out of me. Those words stabbed straight into my chest. The old lady, this house, everything will be yours. I had once tried to see Emily as part of this family, even if I never fully understood her. But I never imagined she could speak with such venom, such calculated malice. I played the recording again, and it felt like Jerome was standing behind me whispering, "Now you see." But the envelope wasn't empty. There was one more note. I unfolded it and my breath caught. "Don't be afraid. I am watching over you. The Watcher. The Watcher." I pressed my lips together, staring at the words for a long time. It wasn't from Emily. It couldn't be from anyone in my family. This person knew too much details I didn't even know myself until today. Someone had been observing Emily gathering evidence and observing me. Someone out there had been following every move. But why? To protect me? Or to pull strings for their own agenda? The house suddenly felt too quiet. The ticking clock in the living room sounded louder than usual, as if time itself had stopped waiting for me to understand what I had stumbled into. Who was the Watcher? A hidden ally? An enemy of Emily? Or someone with a darker motive? I had the distinct feeling that someone was watching me from behind the door or from the shadows of the hallway. And for the first time in years, I felt truly afraid. It took me nearly an hour to calm myself after reading the last line inside the Watcher's envelope. The photos, the debt documents under my name, the audio file of Emily's voice, all of it spun before my eyes like a storm with no exit. Each piece of evidence pointed in the same direction toward betrayal and shameless greed. I sat for a long time in the living room, staring at the long strip of sunlight stretching across the tiled floor like a path I had no choice but to walk. I knew Emily wouldn't stay still once she realized how much I knew. And just as I expected, the storm named Emily came for me sooner than I thought. The clack of high heels pulsed toward my door, followed by a violent pounding that rattled the entire frame. "Open the door, you useless old woman!" Her voice held nothing of restraint anymore, only anger, fear of being exposed, and the ferocity of someone willing to tear apart anything blocking her way. I rose slowly, so slowly it was deliberate, letting Emily pound again, harder this time. When I finally turned the lock and cracked the door open, her face appeared flushed, red eyes blazing like a cornered predator. "You've taken everything from me. What more do you want?" I asked, my voice no longer trembling, the fear replaced by an old kind of sorrow. Emily shoved past me without waiting for permission, her gaze pressing into my chest like a blade. "Your life, this house." For a moment, the room dimmed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and finally understood what Jerome had been warning me about. This wasn't an inconsiderate young woman. This was someone willing to do anything to get what she wanted. Someone with no boundaries left. Footsteps pounded down the stairs. Noah rushed in horrified at the sight of Emily standing inches from me. "Emily, you've lost your mind!" She swung toward him, scoffing, her rage only sharpening. "Lost my mind? You think I've lost my mind? Do you know what she's doing? She's trying to ruin our lives." I wanted to believe Noah would stand on the side of truth, that he remembered being the boy who held my hand through thunderstorms. But the uncertainty in his eyes told me hope had no place here. Emily turned back to me, stepping closer, her words landing like poison. "Don't forget, she's going to die soon." Who even cares? A cold shock ran through me straight from my chest to my stomach. Every word she spoke hammered itself into my memory, but instead of fear, something else rose in me, something sharper, clearer. I stepped back, my hand slipping behind me to quietly press record on the phone I had placed in my pocket earlier. I knew eventually she would cross the final line, and I needed to be ready. "Do you even hear yourself? Do you even hear yourself, Emily?" I asked, keeping my voice steady though my insides churned. "Oh, I hear myself just fine," she sneered, "and I'll do whatever it takes to keep what's mine." The room felt emptied of air. No one spoke. Only Emily's ragged breathing and Noah's horrified stare filled the silence. I kept my phone close to my body, making sure every sound was being captured perfectly. At last, I said, "Enough. Get out of my room." Emily let out a twisted, bitter laugh and turned toward the door. But before she reached it, she stopped, glancing back at me with a look that chilled me to the bone. "This isn't over, Mother." The door slammed shut, leaving Noah standing in shame, unable to look at me. I sat back down, my heart racing, but my mind clearer than it had been in years. The phone in my hand was still recording every cruel word Emily spoke, waiting inside it like a loaded weapon. And I knew then that this recording would be the weapon that would take her down in court. After the confrontation with Emily, I knew I could no longer handle everything alone. The evidence I had gathered was enough to terrify anyone, yet I needed someone who could see beyond my fear, someone who understood the law, someone who recognized the danger hidden beneath Emily's actions. So the next morning, I met with Gloria Reeves, a well-known attorney in town, someone unafraid to face people willing to destroy others for their own gain. When I stepped into Gloria's office, the sunlight from the window reflected off her glasses, giving her a stern but steady presence. She stood, shook my hand firmly, as if telling me I wasn't alone anymore. "I've read your message," Gloria said, as I placed my bag of documents on the table, "but I want to hear it directly from you." Where did it all start? I told her everything from the necklace being sold, the note Jerome left, the safety deposit box, the letter, the watcher's envelope, to the recorded audio of Emily screaming like she had lost all control. With each detail, Gloria's eyes grew colder, sharper. When I played the recording from the USB, Emily's voice dripping with venom, Gloria tightened her grip on her pen. "Mrs. Marianne, this is fraud, intimidation, and attempted property theft." Her words echoed through the room, giving me both relief and devastation. Hearing someone else confirm my fears felt like reopening a wound that had never healed. Gloria continued reviewing the video the watcher sent Emily, handing an envelope of money to a tattooed man. She frowned. My God, she really is dangerous. At that moment, the door opened. Noah stepped inside, his eyes red as if he hadn't slept. I didn't know how much he had heard from last night, but clearly he had seen a part of his wife he could no longer deny. "Mom," he whispered, voice cracking, "I'm sorry I let you live with someone like her." I looked at him for a long moment. I didn't blame him, not out loud, but the hurt was still there, deep and heavy. I nodded gently, letting him know that I accepted the apology, even if I couldn't fully forgive yet. Just then, my phone buzzed. A new email. The sender had no name, just a single character that made my chest tighten. Watcher. I opened it and handed the phone to Gloria. The message contained only one chilling line. She hired someone to follow you. Gloria exhaled, not in defeat, but like someone fitting the final piece into a dangerous puzzle. We need to see the last video on the USB. I nodded. Gloria opened the final file. The screen lit up with a video of Emily standing in a dark alley behind a cafe, handing an envelope to a man with sharp eyes and a thin smile. Gloria pointed at the screen, her voice firm. She has no way out now. I stared at the man's face, a cold shiver crawling down my spine. Something about him stirred a deeper fear, something Jerome had sensed long before I did. Why did Emily know someone like this? What was his connection to Jerome? Was he the reason Jerome heard those disturbing things before he died? The questions spun in my head until I felt dizzy. Gloria looked at me unwavering. Mrs. Marianne, we're taking her to court, but I need to know, are you ready to see this through? I tightened my hands, remembering Jerome's letter, the necklace, the tears I had shed because of my daughter-in-law's betrayal. I lifted my head and met Gloria's gaze. I'm ready. But just as I said it, the tattooed man's smile flashed again in my mind, haunting, lingering, unsettling. Who was he really? And why was he connected to Jerome? The day of the trial arrived with a heavy layer of gray clouds hanging over the town. I followed Gloria into the courtroom, feeling as if every step was carrying me toward a place where my life would split in two. The cold wooden benches, the rustling papers, the curious eyes of strangers all formed a tension so tight it felt ready to snap. Emily sat at the opposite table, her face pale from sleeplessness, but her eyes still full of that familiar defiance. She didn't look at me, only glanced around as though searching for an escape. Noah sat behind her, his hands clasped together, conflict swimming in his eyes. I could see the guilt there, the truth he could no longer deny. The judge entered. Everyone rose and then sat again. Silence fell so sharply I could hear the faint click of the gavel hitting wood. Gloria stood first, her eyes sharp as if polished by truth. Your Honor, this is the recording where Emily says she's going to die soon. The audio echoed across the courtroom, each word slicing the air like a blade. The anger, the hatred, the dismissal of my life, it made the room recoil. Emily jumped to her feet, slamming her hand on the table. It's edited. She tricked me, Gloria looked calmly toward the judge. Your Honor, the file is original, taken directly from the device, no alterations, and we have more evidence. The judge raised a hand, an effortless gesture that instantly restored silence. Sit down, now. Emily froze mid-breath, lips trembling with fury. She glanced at me as though I had stolen her world, but no one believed her anymore. Gloria presented everything, the forged loan papers in my name, the photos of Emily paying the tattooed man, the video of her plotting. Each piece hit like a hammer, driving the nails of truth deeper. Noah stood, his voice rough but resolute. Emily, stop. I'm not defending you anymore. Emily's face shattered right then, not from remorse, but because she knew she had lost her last shield. The judge reviewed the documents once more, then looked up with finality. Based on the evidence and testimony, the court orders Emily Thompson is to be removed from the residence permanently. The room fell completely silent. I heard nothing but my heartbeat slow and heavy. Not joy, not triumph, just grief for a family I once believed I had. Emily sprang to her feet, mouth open to scream, but no sound came out. Security escorted her away as she stared at me with twisting hatred and fear. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. When I opened them again, the room blurred into slow motion, and at the far end of the courtroom, near the exit door, I saw him, a tall man in a dark coat, standing perfectly still. The watcher. He didn't hide his face. He didn't look away. He simply watched me as though he had been waiting for this exact moment. I stood up abruptly, my heart slamming against my ribs. But when I blinked just once, he vanished. No footsteps, no sound, no reaction from anyone else. It was as if only I had seen him. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. He looked straight at me, then disappeared. Who was he, and why was he watching me? I walked out of the courthouse with legs heavy, as if dragging an entire lifetime behind me. Most people had already left, but in the wide courtyard outside the building, Emily was still standing there, arms limp at her sides, hair messy, eyes burning red with anger and desperation. The cold wind sweeping through didn't even make her blink. She stared at me, as if trying to carve this moment into her memory to feed her hatred. As I stepped past her, she moved closer, lips trembling, before she whispered something that pierced straight through my spine. "You'll pay for this." No screaming this time, just a low curse, quiet but sharp enough to cut skin. I froze for a moment, looking right at her, seeing the darkness Jerome had warned me about flaring in her eyes. Noah ran over and pulled her away, but even while being dragged, she kept her gaze locked on me, as if delivering one final thread before disappearing into the car. When they finally drove off, only then did I exhale, but it didn't bring me any relief. Noah turned back, standing in front of me. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for everything." I looked at the son I had raised with my whole heart. Yet now, between us was a gap, carved by the 3 dark years I had endured under his wife's cruelty. "Noah, I need time. You know that." He nodded, eyes red, then stepped back. We didn't hug. That empty space felt like a crack that couldn't be sealed yet. When I got home, my phone rang. A strange number. I hesitated before answering. "Is this Mrs. Marianne Carter?" "Yes, speaking." "This is the Financial Crimes Department. We've opened an investigation into a loan shark network. Emily Thompson is involved. We need you to come in for a statement." I leaned against the wall, heart pounding. I thought the trial had closed everything, but it was only the surface of something much deeper. Just as I set the phone down, I heard the faint rustle of paper at the front door. Someone had slipped something through the mail slot. I stepped out, glanced left and right, but the street was empty. A white envelope lay neatly under the doormat. No name. I opened it, and chills ran down my spine. Inside was a single sheet of paper with bold, sharp handwriting. "Don't breathe easy. This is only the beginning." I gripped the paper tightly, hearing the thundering of my own heartbeat. The image of the man in the courthouse flashed back, the way he looked at me, not like a threat, but not like an ally either. The watcher knew too much, far too much. Was he the one who sent me the evidence? Did he know what was hidden inside box 3172? Was he connected to Jerome? Or did he have a purpose of his own, darker and deeper than any of us understood? I looked around my small house, once a place of safety, now a dim box filled with shadows that made me wonder who might be watching. I felt trapped between 2 forces closing in on me. On one side was Emily, hissing her venomous threat. On the other side was the mysterious watcher who saved me yet terrified me at the same time. I set the paper on the table, my hands trembling despite my effort to stay calm. Whose side was the watcher truly on? After days so heavy that even breathing felt like work, I finally decided to tidy up the living room. The late afternoon light slipped through the window, washing everything in a warm amber glow. For the first time in a long while, the house felt like it could hold a little warmth again. I hung the necklace back on the wall, right where Jerome used to put our old family photos. Seeing it there, shimmering gently under the lamp, made me believe, just for a moment, that I could breathe a bit easier. When I lifted it closer to check a scratch, I accidentally caught something engraved along the edge, a line so faint and worn I had never noticed it before. Tiny letters, delicate, almost erased with time, but still readable when I tilted the charm toward the light. "When danger comes, follow the light." I whispered the words as if speaking directly to Jerome. "When danger comes, follow the light." Beautiful but terrifying, because Jerome never wrote anything without purpose. Every word he left behind carried a meaning he expected me to find. I placed the necklace back on the wall. But seconds later, from the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move across the window. Not fast, not clear enough to identify, just enough to freeze me. I stepped toward the window, heart pounding loud enough to echo in my ears. I pulled the curtain aside. Outside was only the breeze pushing at the branches and an empty street. But the feeling that someone had been standing there watching clung to the air like a thin layer of frost. A sudden cold wind swept through the house. The back door had somehow swung open, even though I was certain I locked it. The gust was strong enough to knock a piece of paper off the table. I turned toward the noise, breath tight in my chest. Then the phone rang. A call. No name, no contact, just a string of unfamiliar numbers. My hand trembled as I picked it up. Part of me wanted to run. Another part needed to know. I inhaled deeply and answered. For several seconds, all I heard was wind. Then a low voice emerged, deep and slow, dragging each word as if carved from stone. "Marianne." My body stiffened, my throat dried up. The voice continued. "Jerome entrusted me to protect you, but the darkness hasn't stopped." My pulse stumbled. "Who are you?" I whispered, sounding like a lost child. But he didn't respond. There was only breathing on the other end, steady, close, too real. A small click sounded like someone pulling a plug, and the call ended abruptly. My phone crackled with static, a harsh, eerie noise that faded after a few seconds. The house was silent again, the kind of silence that feels thick, as if the air itself is listening. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, trying to steady my breath. In the corner of the room, Jerome's necklace caught the light in a strange way, glowing faintly, like the engraving itself was whispering to me. Who is the watcher? A guardian Jerome trusted? Or someone far more dangerous than Emily, waiting for the right moment to step out of the shadows? I don't know. And perhaps the darkness he spoke of has only just begun to wake.